All right. Hello there. Welcome to The Creative Imposter. I am podcast strategist, story editor, and your host for this show, Andrea Klunder. Let me just tab over to my other window here and go live on Instagram. Excellent. Here we are. So, it's Thursday. It's the end of January, the end of month one of a new year. How on earth did we get here? Um, it's been a wild month. How are you? Tune in. Let me know. Put it in the comments, in the chat. Tell me how you are doing. How are you feeling? Um, I will say this month has been a wild ride. And this solo episode of The Creative Imposter is officially part of our series that we're in the midst of right now called, let me adjust this. This should be closer to my face. Called When Your Art Becomes Your Job. And, okay. Whew, we're here. Okay, this is part of our series called When Your Art Becomes Your Job. And we still have a sprinkling of our previous series, which was a little spicier, called Creativity and Media as Resistance, because, well, things are still not well here in the United States. It literally feels somewhere between we've been taken hostage by crazy people. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. We have been taken hostage, and the country is suffering from some horrible malady that nobody knows how to cure. So that's how it feels. And lately, resistance has felt like instead of resisting against an administration or a regime, instead of resisting policies that do not align with our worldview and our values and our morality, rather than resistance being against systems of power that are oppressing people here in this country and abroad at large, not just in the United States. But lately, resistance has felt like resistance against my own apathy and sense of powerlessness and defeat. And I, for one, am tired. I'm tired of the cognitive dissonance between masked thugs being paid by our federal government to descend upon the streets of our cities, largely liberal leaning cities, rip people. And let's be clear, when I say people, I mean often citizens of the country, out of their cars and homes and workplaces, throwing them into detention centers for show, basically, and in increasing numbers, murdering them on the spot. The cognitive dissonance between that reality and the fact that I need to produce and edit podcasts in order to make a living and buy groceries, between that and helping my parents move to a senior living community in the middle of winter, between that and the fact that I'm still doing my best to drive to the gym to meet with my personal trainer or take a Zumba class multiple times per week. Speaking of my trainer, never thought that I would be someone with a personal trainer. But anyways, he's great. He told me at our first training session that part of the goal when it comes to strength training, which is what we're focusing on, was to push almost to the point of failure. And I laughed out loud. Listen, I've probably mentioned this on the podcast before, but I was a straight A student in elementary through high school, valedictorian of my graduating class, graduated magna cum laude from college. I don't do failure. Goal equals failure does not compute in my brain. Everything just sort of goes white and steam comes out of my ears. But apparently, almost to the point of failure, with failure as the goal that you are working towards, apparently that's how you build muscle, which is what we're trying to do. And listen, when he has me warming up with that resistance band or increasing the amount of weight and hence the pressure on the leg press, or get this one, the pit shark machine, I start sweating. I do my best. And then after our hour together, I need to immediately go home, eat protein, and take a nap. Resistance is exhausting. Building strength is hard. My nervous system is in overdrive. And to be honest, I haven't really felt much like making podcasts lately. And in fact, on the most recent episode of Normal Gossip, which is one of my go to podcasts for not thinking about our country imploding, uh, on the most recent episode of Normal Gossip, host Rachel Hampton and producer Sierra Spragley Ricks talk about this same struggle, although obviously from a different viewpoint, from a different vantage point, as their identities are different than mine. But the struggle is still there. And the episode, which is called A Different Kind of Finale, and which you can find in your favorite podcast app, I encourage you to go check out that episode because they do a great job of kind of breaking down this um, push and pull, this tension between needing to do work as a creative that has a specific purpose and a specific role and a specific function for your audience, and feeling out how to do that when it feels like all this other stuff is going on. Not when it feels like all this other stuff is going on. When all this other stuff is going on, and creating a comedic storytelling podcast about gossip feels fluffy, for lack of a better word. So I do encourage you to check that out. Let me pop their URL up onto the screen. If you are listening to the audio version of this episode after the fact, it'll be linked in the show notes for you in the episode description in your app. But for the purposes of the live stream, you can find the Normal Gossip podcast again in your favorite app or at defector.com/normal gossip podcast with hyphens in between normal gossip and podcast. All right. From there, what I wanted to share is that last summer on this show, I had leadership coach and therapist Lisa Lackey as a guest. The episode is called Resistance Doesn't Have to Be Loud to Make Changes. So you can go check out that episode after this one if you haven't already. But Lisa had crafted last year a women's group, high achieving women's group called The Second Knowing. And I participated in cohort 1 of that group called The Awakening. And I've talked about this group here before, so I'm not going to go into too much depth into the structure or what is actually in that or the philosophy, but you can find out more at the URL that I will pop onto the screen now. You can find out more about Lisa and The Second Knowing at insideoutrecovery.com/the-second-knowing. Again, if you're listening to the audio version of this after the fact, if you're listening to the audio version of this, then it'll be linked in the show notes for you. But as part of this expanding cohort, because she's run a couple of different cohorts of this framework and this program, recently Lisa hosted a one-time virtual gathering open to any of the women who had participated in any of the various cohorts of the Second Knowing. It was kind of like a check-in, a recentering, a chance to just show up in community, which right now is hugely important, but also sometimes challenging to do. But what I noticed in that hour together of that meetup with some women who I did meet during my cohort, and some whom I had never met because they were from a different group, was that somehow magically, probably not magically, probably intentionally on Lisa's part, we were able to dive straight into the deep end together because we had the shared understanding that we were in a safe place with people who were coming from that same framework, facilitated, of course, by Lisa. So we were already aligned. We were already on the same page. We didn't have to sort of like navigate what people's belief systems were or where they were in their journey, et cetera, et cetera. We were able to share vulnerably what was showing up for us personally, professionally, whatever, without fear of saying the wrong thing, without fear of judgment or pushback or criticism. We knew that we were going to be seen and heard and understood and supported in that 1 hour virtual container. Contrast this with another recent virtual call for a small group of women entrepreneurs who we had all just recently met. Some of us were meeting for the first time on that call. And we were pulled together because whoever we were connected to, we seemed to enjoy each other's personalities and have some similar things, being work from home, mostly solo small business owners. So it was kind of like water cooler time for us. And I noted towards the beginning of the session, as we were kind of introducing each other and seeing where we were all from and what everybody's businesses were, I noticed that everyone else seemed to be located geographically in more traditionally conservative leaning regions of the country than I am here in my progressive liberal Chicago bubble. But I wasn't thinking about it too much because we were talking about entrepreneurship, work, tech, etc. So not necessary to be thinking about, politics and whatnot, until one comment came up from somebody that bordered on political ideology. Like, it could have very easily tipped in that direction. Nothing terrible, but there was that definite slant away from where I would naturally go. And the spidey senses kicked in, the arm hair sort of rose a little bit, stood up, and I found myself listening to what she was saying and silently praying, please don't say something that's going to make me not like you. Please, please, please. I pushed down my immediate reactionary response to, let's be honest, say something sarcastically against what she was commenting on, and decided just to breathe and listen and pray. I suddenly was reevaluating. I wasn't sure whether I was in a safe place in that moment, ideologically. I wasn't sure whether I was in a safe place in that moment ideologically. Fortunately, it was just one comment, and we were able to quickly turn the corner to another topic. And the overall conversation and community ended up being really fun and rewarding. I mean, after all, we had more in common than not. I still don't actually know the specific political beliefs in that Zoom, but it's okay. And I'll come back to that space because I think it's important to have both types of interactions, circles, communities, what have you. People who think like you and are aligned in your value set, and people who don't, but who you still have common ground with and who you still can trust. So I think both are valuable. Going back to that call with Lisa, I shared in that group that part of my exhaustion right now is this feeling of powerlessness. Like none of the people in power can or are willing to do anything about what is clearly not okay with the actions of our federal government right now. So, I mean, like, what on earth am I going to do about it? And Lisa asked, what if it's not about doing, but being? Okay, but I don't want to be let off the hook. I feel a sense of responsibility to do the right thing. And another cohort member mentioned that she is intentionally and consciously resting more than usual and doing deep self care practices so that when the time comes for her to do, when the opportunity is there, or the call to action is there, or the thing that she can be a part of comes, that she'll be rested, she'll be resourced, she'll be ready. So for now, I'm resting. It's about creating that sense of readiness. Um, I'm going to the gym. It's about creating that strength and resilience. I'm taking things as I can. And if that means releasing episodes of The Creative Imposter a little more slowly or taking longer to get back to somebody in my inbox, I have to honor that. The good news is that the audio edit of my recent episode with Jenny Wetter from Repros Fight Back from the Creativity and Media as Resistance series will be releasing this Sunday in the audio podcast feed, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, my favorite app, Pocket Casts, or wherever you're listening to fine podcasts. Jenny is the producer and host of a podcast that I mentioned called Repros Fight Back. And I just wanted to show you. They recently released a merch line, including this really cute design. I am totally a cat person. It says support Repro Podcats. It's kind of an inside industry joke with the Podcats thing. But on the other side, sorry, my coffee drips are kind of making this not quite so glamorous. The Repros Fight Back podcast on all things repro. So this is reproductive justice, reproductive health, reproductive rights. And it's a great podcast doing excellent work in the space. We talked about some tough things, but I really did enjoy my conversation with Jenny. And so that show you can learn more about at reprosfightback.com on the screen here for viewers, in the show notes for audio listeners. And I'm happy to be sharing the audio edit with a new intro from me from our live conversation. Also, my takeaway from that session with Lisa and community means that my takeaway is that if what I can do right now, if I can't change the actions of the regime in power in our country right now, if what I can do is help those of you who are supporting your communities, resourcing your people, or even offering respite from the world such as it is through podcasting, it might not seem like much, but I'll do my best. So here is my somewhat awkward transition from this diatribe about energy and resources and resistance to podcasting data. So if you are into podcasting, stick around. But if not, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. And if you have any thoughts about resistance fatigue and creativity or entrepreneurship or deep self-care strategies, comment on this video or email me, andrea@infuselife.net. Again, that's andrea@infuselife.net. And let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what this conversation, this line of inquiry is bringing up for you. So, data, podcasting. All right. At the end of last year, friend of the pod, Megan Doherty from One Stone Creative and her team compiled and published their annual State of Business Podcasting report. Let me see if I can bring up some visuals for you here in the video version. Share screen. Yes, yes, yes. Allow. Here we go. All right, State of Business Podcasting 2025. So this was at the end of last year, what the top 100 business shows are doing and what we can learn from them. So I am going to encourage you to do two things. One, go add my conversation from September of 2024 with Megan on the Creative Imposter to your podcast queue. And that one was called Make Friends with Your Data. And I also want you to get your own copy of this report because I'm not going to cover all of it here. And there's a lot of really interesting information. So you can get this report at onestonecreative.net/report. That's onestonecreative.net/report. And I do encourage you to do so. Now, these stats are based on the top 100 self-identified business podcasts according to Apple Podcasts. So top 100. And so the numbers of things may skew a little higher than what you see for your current show. And that's because this isn't the average of all the business podcasts. It's the average of only that top 100. Also, I'm going to say that as with all data, you got to take it with a grain of salt. And you also need to do some interpretation, some creative storytelling, and some critical thinking about how this may or may not apply to what you're doing and how it may impact you. So here are a few highlights I want to showcase with my interpretations. And again, take my interpretations with a grain of salt as well as the data itself. All right. So let me come over here to the first thing that I want to bring up, which is size of audience. All right, size of audience. So over here on the right-hand column, we see 815,763 average monthly downloads. So So that's monthly, that's not per episode. One of the biggest things when I am consulting with someone about their show and their strategy or talking about working with someone is people want to know how to grow their audience. They have ideas in their mind, which come from all kinds of different sources about what a good size audience, an impressive size audience might be. And a lot of times it's skewed. I'll have an indie creator who's running a business, a solopreneur, if you will, who's running a business and putting out a podcast maybe weekly, maybe every other week, and they want to get to 150,000 downloads. That's a lot. That's not normal for the average indie produced show. So monthly downloads of the top 100, the most number of monthly downloads was across all of their episodes that released that month, but also like think back catalog as well. 16,618,779. I will never see those numbers on the Creative Imposter in my lifetime. I'm not being a pessimist. That's just real. Yeah. I don't have the resources to grow that kind of audience. The fewest in the top 100 number of monthly downloads, 282. Look at your stats. Did you get 282 downloads across all of your episodes last month? You might be doing better than you think. And then the median, so that's not the average, the median, the middle number from the highest to the lowest, 73,080 across all episodes for a month. The main takeaway from this is you're probably doing better than you think. And total number of downloads is not really the most important measure of your show. Next thing, release cadence. This is a tough slide for a lot of us indie creators because of the top 100 business podcasts, you will see that 43% of those top 100 are releasing weekly episodes. 20% are releasing 2 episodes per week, 7% 3 times per week, and 21% are releasing daily. Daily. Well, no wonder they're a top podcast. Who has time? Okay, if it's your full-time job to make the podcast, like that's your whole job, and you have a team of people working with you, and you have a network behind you to help with promotion and advertising, great. I will tell you that for me, as fast as I am with production skills, uh, like I would love to maintain a weekly show. Even having this weekly live stream, I still need to build in breaks for myself because without any editing, whatever, just streaming live weekly is a lot. For a lot of my clients, weekly is just not realistic, certainly not 2, 3, or 7 or 5 times a week. Uh yeah, it's a lot. And even with this weekly cadence, sometimes we're building in breaks. So, like, we'll take it seasonally, which you can see in the top 100. This isn't really so much of a thing, but we'll say, okay, we're going to release weekly for 10 weeks, and then we're going to take a couple weeks off. And then, so we're building in those buffers. It's also expensive to produce and release a show like this. So, if you are not going to do it all yourself, if you are going to hire help, this can get quite costly. And we'll talk about audio quality and production and how that matters later. So I just want you to take a breath. And if you feel like you're not growing as fast as you would like to, just know this is a lot of content. And it's not really realistic to think that you're going to be doing this to reach that top 100 necessarily, unless, like I said, you're making it your full-time job. And another thing is if you think back to those average monthly download numbers, well, if you have a daily show, that doesn't have to be that many downloads per episode to hit those numbers. So just keep that in mind. Next thing I wanted to look at that I found really interesting for us indie creators is looking at cover art. And what this slide is showing is in your cover art square in the apps, what is the dominant color of that? What's the preliminary color? Like I have kind of a blue teal-ish, has a little bit of green in it color. That's my primary color. Well, it's one of the most popular colors for business podcasts. So we see black as the top, blue and teal second, white, green, and then 5% or less were red, gray, yellow, orange, or purple. Also, if we flip over to this right-hand side, we'll see the cover art style. And this is whether the cover art has your face as the host on it, a graphic or a logo, something that's like illustrated but not a human photo, or typography only. So font, text, something, bold and clever with the name of the show. What's interesting to me is that photo of the host is 70%. And what I am going to infer from that without knowing which podcasts are being listed as the top 100 in Apple Podcasts for business podcasts right now, I'm going to say that for the most part, these are probably people who have some well-known name/face recognition. Not necessarily celebrity per se, but recognition within their industry, within their niche, within their field. They have some visibility so that having their face on there matters. Now, listen, my cover art has my face on it. Not because people recognize my face or I'm a celebrity or have visual recognition or anything like that. It's just a stylistic choice, partly because I started podcasting at a time where like everyone put their face on their cover art. So, it's just kind of a thing. But does this data mean that if you want a successful business podcast, you should put your face on your cover art and you should use the colors black, blue, and white because those are the most popular styles and colors in the top 100 business podcasts? Maybe, but not necessarily. What I would encourage you to think about is it telling you that you should go with that trend? Or does it mean that if you use a purple cover or yellow or gray, that when somebody is scanning through available podcasts in a particular topic, doesn't mean that your cover art might stand out because it's not the visual norm. And they might like hover over it or pause or notice it more because it's different than what is there. I can't answer that question for you, but it's something for you to think about. Also, think about your particular niche. So within business, we didn't go over this slide, but there's a lot of different types of business. There's a lot of different niches. There's women in business, there's creative entrepreneurship, there's tech, there's finance, there's so many different genres and subsets within that. So if we were to even break this down into smaller categories, what are the podcasts in your niche, in your subcategory, in your area? What are the trends amongst that? And is that something you want to lean into so that you're associated with those trends and those niches and those industries? Or is that something that you want to differentiate from so that your show stands out and might get noticed more in a sea of blue cover art? So those are some questions to think about as relates to your strategic decisions based on the data that you are being presented with. The next slide I wanted to share with you is main offer. So the second question that I mostly get asked when I'm consulting with someone or talking with someone about their show or designing strategy, the first one was, how do I get more downloads? How do I increase my audience? The second question, maybe this is the first question. They kind of go back and forth as to which one gets asked first. But the next question is, how do I make money from my podcast? which for somebody who's been podcasting for over a decade, that was sort of the furthest thought from my mind. Not the furthest thought, like I knew that I wanted to build a business around my podcast, but I didn't really know what that would look like. So when I started, I was just like, can I make this thing? Who might listen to it and what on earth is it about? Like that was where I started. And then that slowly evolved into how to utilize the podcast as a business or monetary tool. And so here are some ideas of how you can potentially make money from your podcast. And what you're going to see on this slide, I think is super interesting because even though these top 100 business podcasts have obviously larger than average numbers, audience sizes, etc., the number one way of monetizing the podcast content is not advertising. At least not dynamically inserted ads for casinos and mattresses and whatever else, Whole Foods Market, home delivery services, etc., etc. You might think it's advertising, and that is actually when people tell me like I want my audience to get to this number so that I can start having ads in my podcast. I think that that is not you're not setting yourself up for success with that strategy. So you can see here that of those 100 podcasts, like 65, maybe almost 70 of them are host or brand direct sales. So that is selling something related to your business. Coaching and consulting services, membership community courses, host business investment, books and speaking. These are all kind of at the same level here and all have to do with ancillary service offerings from your core business. And then network and advertising comes in less than 20, affiliate and lead generation. So a lot of the sponsorships that I do is related to affiliates, which is where I have a partnership with a company that sells a thing that I think is relevant to my audience and is a thing that I believe in the quality or the usefulness of. And so I might promote that thing and or that company or that service or that product. And then when you actually purchase it, then I receive a small commission of some sort from that. So that is what affiliates are. So just to think about, is inserting ads into your podcast really your best strategy? Next, we're almost done here with my interpretations. Show format. Oh, this slide I love. I love because I love to be contrary. I love doing interviews. On this show, I like to do a lot of interviews. And the main reason I like to do interviews is not because doing interviews helps me to monetize my show. To be honest, it doesn't really even help me to grow my audience per se. People think, oh, well, if I have guests on the show, guests will share the podcast with their audience and therefore I'll get a bigger audience. That's not wrong, but it's not necessarily true. Also, interviews, I'll be honest, to do good quality interviews that stand out, here you can see like interviews by and far, far and away, by and large, interviews far and away, by and large, are the top show format for these top business podcasts, almost half. And I will say that the number of bad to mediocre interview shows out there is large. It is not as easy as you might think to produce a high quality, engaging interview style podcast without some skills training. And so looking at these other formats, you're like, well, if you're not doing an interview, is it even a podcast? Yes, this is a podcast right now. This is a solo. This is just me. Alternating, that may mean that it's not always the same. So I guess my format would probably be an alternating format. Co-hosts having a conversation. So you always have the same people on there, but there is more than one person. and other various formats as well. So I would say this slide is telling you that if you're going to do an interview show, great, but it better be excellent in order for it to stand out. Or it better have a really fascinating point of differentiation. There may be some opportunities here to stand out or differentiate by doing some other formats. The next slide. Editing style on the right. There are 3 categories here: hygiene, minimal, or highly produced. Highly produced is usually where there's like maybe music transitions or music beds. Maybe there's different segments. It's highly edited for narrative content. Maybe there's some voiceover, things like that. That's 40%. Hygiene is more like what I do for this show when I release the audio edits. Those edits, I'm shortening it a little bit and taking out any parts that either are no longer timely or kind of just dragged on too long, if I was rambling as the host too long, or if there was some clarification, some filler words like or things like that, just to tighten it up a little bit. So that's hygiene. And then minimal would be like maybe improving the audio quality, maybe, and adding the intro, outro, maybe a short intro, or yeah, the intro, outro. That would be minimal. And so you can see here that of these top 100, they're either highly produced or hygiene. That means edit your podcast. Audio production matters, audio quality matters, intentionality and thoughtfulness matters. That's what I want to say about that. And then outro elements. Often with podcasts, and I struggle with this too, we want to give the audience every opportunity to connect with us and be part of our community and part of our show and part of our ecosystem. And we don't know if the person listening is somebody who's active on Instagram or LinkedIn. We want to express gratitude by thanking our guests. We want to give credit to the people who worked on the show. We want people to rate and review the podcast. We want people to connect with our guest. We want people to sign up for our thing. We want people to join our thing. We want people to follow us here and there. It's a lot. It's too many calls to action. And so when you're thinking about your outro, first of all, most people are going to skip your outro, especially if your outro is like the same. It's like as soon as they hear that outro music or they hear you ask the guest how people can connect with them, or they hear you thanking the guest, they're already out. They've already turned off the podcast or skipped to another show or another episode. So most people do not listen to that outro unless you're giving them some reason that they know of to listen to it. So for the people who do listen to it, who are listening all the way through to the end, those are like the diehard people. What is it that you actually want them to do? What is the thing you actually want to leave them with? And not 100 things, a couple, 1 or 2, maybe 3. Think about that. And the very last thing that I wanted to share was the YouTube of it all, the video of it all. Listen, I learned how to do film and video production in college. That's what my degree is in. And I decided to work in audio because video is so much more complex. There's so many more things to think about when you're adding the visual element to the audio element. None of the audio things go away, but there's a whole new host of things to consider. And what I find interesting is that right now, according to this report, of these top 100 business podcasts, 97% have YouTube channels. This is like blowing my mind. Only 58% would consider themselves to be video first shows. Video first versus audio first. This is kind of weird languaging, but it means like when you're conceptualizing your show and when you're producing your show, are you thinking primarily of the video product and the audio product is just extracted and is sort of like an afterthought? Is the primary video, or is the primary of your show, the focus is audio, but you're including a video element in the strategy, even though the heart of the show is in the audio? I would, even though this is a live stream here that I'm doing with the Creative Imposter, I would still consider the Creative Imposter to be audio first, because there is the intention of the audio version as I'm making this live stream. That's where my bigger audience is in audio. And just personally, as a preference, I prefer consuming audio than video. I'm not much of a YouTube person, but 58% video first shows, and 90% put the full podcast episode on their channel. What are they putting on their video channel? Primarily live action talking head. That's what you're looking at right now, basically, or a StreamYard interview with two people in two different locations, or something that's more highly produced in the studio. Looks great, sounds great, more complicated for a lot of reasons. Mix of formats, a still image with an audio over it. So that's kind of like an audiogram, or if you're pushing your audio episodes from your host, like Libsyn can do, you're pushing the audio episode with just that widescreen cover thumbnail, then that's what that would be. And I'm not actually sure the difference between audiogram and still with audio style. Not sure what that differentiation is, but you can see that having these live videos are what's actually happening on YouTube. And then thinking about how you're using YouTube and how frequently you're posting. Here are some thoughts here, some features you may want to take advantage of. Playlists. If you're not super up on the YouTube stuff, this is all stuff that can be set in your Creator Studio on the back end. Playlists, podcast feature, shorts, which are the vertical videos that are short, and chapters. This looks like it's being underutilized, and I've been hearing a lot of recommendations that if you're going to put full-length videos on YouTube, you really want to create chapters, which you need to do by adding timestamps in the YouTube description for these chapters. So a timestamp and the title, and you need to start with a 000 timestamp. That needs to be your first one, and then the other ones from there. So maybe that is an opportunity for something that you could do to help elevate your YouTube game. Now, there's a whole bunch of data in here about different social media platforms, frequency, cadences, etc. And it's all really interesting and really useful, because another one of the questions that I get a lot from people is like, which social media platforms? I hate social media. Do I have to be on social media? Does promoting on social media really work? I think that you could get some ideas from this report if you take a look at it and look through the social media data there as well. Super gratitude to Megan for compiling this report and sharing it. Again, you can get the actual full report, which I encourage you to do, at onestonecreative.net/report. And let me know what you see in there, or what you're thinking about as a result. If you are currently podcasting or soon to be podcasting, which I assume you are if you've watched to this point of the video or listened to this point in the audio episode, then maybe you're feeling a little overwhelmed, or maybe interpreting the data is hard, or maybe like forget the data, you have strategic questions, or you're not quite sure if you're really making the best use of your show for what it is that you want the show to do for your organization, for your company, for your personal brand, for you as the creator, or for your audience as the benefactors of your show. If that's the case, if you have some questions, or you want to switch things up, or you want to make sure that you're starting your show, your new show, in the right direction and thinking of the right things and asking the right questions, I am going to encourage you to take advantage of something that I am offering for a limited time and only a handful of spots, which are free complimentary 30-minute consultations with me online. Not a sales call, not a sales pitch. I will tell you about my services if you are curious and want to know, but I will not be pitching you anything. It is straight up strategy. So you'll fill out a short form, let me know some things. I'll check out your show, check out your company, brand, organization, whatever it is. And I will put some thought into it. We'll meet and then I'll have some ideas for you to consult for that 30 minutes. And that's it. So you can grab a spot with me right now at bit.ly/powerfulpod. That's bit.ly/powerfulpod, all one word. And that's where you can book a time with me for your complimentary strategy session. Oh, wow. Wow, this live stream was almost an hour long. I thought it was going to be like 30 minutes. Okay. We might split this into 2 episodes in the audio version. Yeah, we're totally splitting this into 2 episodes. Thank you so much for joining The Creative Imposter. This podcast is written, hosted, and edited by me, Andrea Klunder. Edwin R. Ruiz is our technical director. Theme music is by Jovia Armstrong. I thank you so much for watching. I thank you so much for listening. And this week, I don't even know what to tell you to do, to be honest. I think do what it is that you need to do in order to take care of yourself, rest, and be well resourced when the time comes for you to do the thing. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.